Welcome back to my channel and my ongoing series on Vedic philosophy from a scientific perspective, based on the book Uncommon Wisdom by Ashish Dalela. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the mind-body divide and a different way of looking at reality that does not have such a divide. So in current scientific understanding, we have the stuff, the material stuff that they measure and try to figure out the world through. And then there's the less tangible, the mind, the senses, which the reality of which gets undermined by this philosophy. So in a semantic approach, instead of the physical objects like being the most real, we turn that, and using the smallest to understand the biggest, we turn that on its head. And we picture the world as an inverted tree with the more abstract leading into the more detailed, and the more abstract being broader and more real in a way, as opposed to the material objects being more real. As in, the material objects are the leaves on the tree. Okay. Okay, let's get to the reading. And then we'll talk more about it. Okay, so in the semantic approach, the world is not things whose combinations are perceived by the mind as ideas. The world is rather ideas whose combinations produce things. In the Cartesian mind-body divide, both mind and matter are substances. In the semantic approach, both mind and body are ideas. There is no material substance, and there is no mental substance either. Rather, both mind and matter need a single theory of ideas. The mind is a simple idea relative to the meanings or other ideas it produces. It's higher in the hierarchy in the tree. The mind is a simple idea relative to the meanings. I read that. Like a complex idea is produced from simple ideas. Similarly, thoughts can be created from the mind. The mind does not have a special position in the pantheon of ideas. The mind is another idea. It is relatively abstract compared to the ideas generated from the mind, but it is not necessarily the most abstract idea. The universe as a whole is the most abstract idea. Similarly, the senses of observation and action are ideas too. These ideas are less abstract relative to the idea of the mind, but more abstract relative to the external objects they perceive or use. So, one thing is that you can't understand the more abstract from the less abstract. You can't understand the origin or the true nature of the senses by studying the objects of the senses. You have to go the other way around. So in the semantic view, we're seeing everything as connected. So if we look at a material object that we consider as a material object as an individual, okay, we can't understand where it comes from or how we can perceive it ultimately as the way we do. These objects are just the leaves on the tree, and we're not able to perceive the branches. I want to say the sticks, the branches that they originate from. we would say that the idea of the fine tip marker of the pen precedes the actual pen. It starts with an idea. So the idea of something is fundamental to something's existence. And within every instance, every manifestation in time of an idea is the idea. So the idea of a horse is within the horse. The idea of a pen is in the pen. And the more details we add to something, the more limitations we place on it as well. And the marker is a collection of ideas. It's a symbol of ideas. And nothing is really one thing. So the marker has an ideal use to write with, but it also contains other possibilities. I can use it to point. I could, pretend it's an airplane. It could be a toy, and then it could be a weapon. But those aren't as ideal uses. It's not the most ideal weapon, right? But maybe in a particular time or circumstance, it may be. And then there's the things that it really can't be. It's not a stuffed animal, or I can't use it to fly with. So this is part of an insight into understanding the limitations of binary logic. The actual world is not like that. Modern science has tried to flatten reality in order to measure it and pick it apart and explain it. But it's not the whole picture. So modern science and math can't operate with secondary properties. It relies on only the primary properties, the hard perceptions things that can be measured. Personally, as a kid, this always really bugged me my whole life, and that's why I'm here today, is because I've always been asking these questions, because I felt like science was teaching me in school that what was real and important was what we could see, yet it was clear that our vision isn't even perfect. We're using this limited perception to decide what's real instead of going further back inside ourselves to find what's real. But in the modern paradigm, in modern philosophy and math, A equals A, right? Like a thing is one thing. But in the real world, it isn't. This isn't just a pen. Context matters. Perspective matters. And when you take out the observer, the personality that's perceiving, that makes choices based on meanings, the world becomes meaningless. And things manifest, things happen because of probability. What the heck is probability? Just means they don't know why or how it happens. But when we bring back the observer, choice, meaning, we can build a whole new science. Bring back this ancient Vedic science that can explain the universe in a consistent and complete way. Because modern science is not consistent and it's not complete. It's not consistent. It has to break things up into all these different disciplines and create different terminology and measurement systems within those systems. Because when they try to go outside that system with that same philosophy, it doesn't work. They don't all match. And it's not complete because it can't explain everything. So let's go back to our reading. This is an audiobook that I'm narrating. This view has historically been problematic. In the early days of science, empiricist philosophers such as Descartes drew a distinction between primary and secondary properties. primary properties include length, mass, speed, temperature, etc., while secondary properties include color, taste, smell, sound, touch, etc. Descartes viewed the separation between primary and secondary properties as essential to the development of science, because it was difficult to describe the external world if it comprised of qualities. Descartes, however, also rested the divide between primary and secondary properties on the mind-matter separation. One distinction followed from the other, and it was impossible to maintain the primary and secondary property distinction without also committing to the divide between mind and matter. While there were critics of this distinction, Leibniz and Berkeley, who argued that the idea of a world as primary properties can never be known because we can only know the world through sensations, the distinction stuck and has been the bedrock of modern science. Over time, however, science has dissolved the distinction between mind and matter by showing that the brain can actually encode the properties of the senses and the mind. It should therefore follow that the distinction between primary and secondary properties must be dissolved as well. But if we commit to this dissolution, then we must describe the world as apples, chairs, and houses rather than mass, charge, force, fields, temperature. Alternately, we must give up the idea that we perceive the world as apples, chairs, colors, tastes, smells, sounds, peoples, houses, etc. When science looks closely, it can't see a boundary between things. And at the end of my last video, I mentioned that the soul creates the boundaries between things. A soul holds things together in that sense. Physical objects, also souls. See, in the semantic, it's just a continuum. It's a hierarchy continuing to a very, very smallness moment of time that can be perceived potentially. So there's not that divide. So basically something that seems more physical and not as changeable would be a soul that doesn't have as much choice and that's maybe existing on a different sort of timeline than we are. So I find the semantic view very satisfying. Science, modern science, is unsatisfying in that it denies our experience, and modern religions can be very unsatisfying in that they deny the spiritual in the physical. And a big part of our problem in the world is separating this idea that of the spirit and matter being separate, because that gave this free pass for exploitation of the physical. Because it's not spiritual, God just gave it to us and we can use it how we like. But the semantic approach dissolves that distinction and gives us a fulfilling vision of the world. Objects are symbols and ideas, just as words are symbols and ideas. This concept that everything is the words and vibration is actually a tangibly consistent view of the world that we find through the Vedic system. This Vedic philosophy is complex to explain, but in the end, it applies to everything. Okay, we're talking about philosophy that applies to your mind and your choices, to the objects in the world around you, to events, to the way a corporation works. It's all the same template. We are all connected. We are all unique. We can see with this system how our mind relates to our reality and how we can move through the world in a way that is more sustainable, peaceful, and ultimately liberating. So if you find that compelling, continue following along with me, and check out shabda.co for loads of input on this paradigm. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste. Hare Krishna. Be well.